Kerry McKenna, and I'm here to honor my father, Edward McKenna, today. And that's him. He was born in Miami, Florida, the eldest of 5 children. He has 4 sisters. And his dad was an Irish immigrant, and his mother was an American citizen. And sometime before World War I, they all moved to Camden, New Jersey. And the last advice we have of our grandfather was that he was drafted into the military for World War I. And the last advice we have of our grandmother was that she was murdered by gunfire in a boarding house that she owned. So these 5 kids, starting with my father at age 8 and down to infants, were placed in that building, which is called the Camden Home for Friendless Children. Now, it's an orphanage, and we're in the early 1900s. And you'll recall that Camden, New Jersey is where Campbell's Soup is headquartered. So Camden was surrounded by truck farms, and if you were a farmer, you could go into an orphanage and get as many children as you wanted to work on your farm. And the deal was they would work without cost to you if you would house them and feed them and send them to school in the off-season. So my father was on a farm like that from the time he was 8 till the time he was 18, at which point he had completed the 8th grade. The youngest girls were raised in the home, and his 2 middle sisters were sent to different farms in New Jersey to work. An aunt in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan gathered this whole crowd back together again. And my father became the head of the household and managed the education and the care of all of his sisters and his aunt until he entered the military. And he fought in France and in Germany, and then was on a troop ship on the way to Japan to invade Honshu when the Japanese surrendered. Came back to the Upper Peninsula, worked as a baker, took a few trips to Chicago to have some fun, met my mother, and I'm here today as a result of all that. And he was a great teacher to my brother and I. He would meet with us every day at the dinner table after dinner. And the kinds of things he would say to us, I'll give you a couple of examples. He would say, you know, boys, the dryer is about to give out. We got to get a new one. We're about 13 years old. He would say, you know, a new dryer is about $600. He'd say, what can I put you down for? So I said, put me down for $20 then. He says, no. I can put you down for a third, and I can put your brother down for a third, and I need the money in 30 days, and just bring cash. So I went to an all-boys high school, 5,000 boys in Chicago. And when I graduated, he said to me, getting ready to go to college, right? I said, yeah. He says, you like girls? I said, oh, boy. He says, well, you know, if you got a girl, you got to have a car. And he says, not a Volkswagen, I mean a real nice car. I said, like a Pontiac. He says, yeah, like a Pontiac. And he said, you know, if you got a girl in a Pontiac, you're going to have to go out on a date. They're going to want to eat and drink and dance. I said, yep, smoke too. I said, yep, everything. And he said, I just want to tell you before we get started that all of that is on you. I'm only buying the tuition, $120 a semester, and everything else is on you, so you're going to need a real job right now. I said, you're right. He says, I've gone to the trouble of organizing a good job for you. He says, it's at Durkee's Famous Foods in Chicago. For those of you that are not familiar with Durkee's famous foods, it's where industrial fat is made to produce swirl ice cream cones. And that stuff comes into the plant in railroad cars filled with tallow, tank cars. And they're steam jacketed, steam is introduced, the tallow melts, goes into the plant, and the job my dad got for me was to go into the tank cars with a steam hose and clean the inside out on the night shift. In a church, it's impossible to completely describe this experience. But I can tell you that when I got to the University of Illinois College of Engineering in the fall, it looked like Club Med to me. So, you know, he faced a lot of adversity. I never heard him complain. I never heard him berate or ridicule or degrade anybody. He taught us by example, and he faced some enormous adversity. I've had some trouble in my life, and so has everybody else, but nothing like what he faced in order to get me where I started. And I'm very grateful to him, and I honor him this day. Edward McKenna. Thank you.
Good morning, Seattle Unity. It's great to be here celebrating Father's Day with you this morning. Thanks to Reverend Karen for giving me this opportunity to honor my father, and for Joseph Zahn and the men's group for recommending that I say a few words. This past Monday, June 12th, was the 100th year anniversary of my father's birth. He was born in Alexandria, Louisiana, a small town in the northwest part of that state. At the age of 17, he, like many other African Americans, left the South in the Great Migration to search for the warmth of other suns. He headed for the bright lights of New York City. The remarkable thing about him was that the small town country boy became an educated and sophisticated New Yorker. He attended a business vocational school. He graduated as valedictorian and with honors. He also attended New York University at night while raising a family. I viewed my dad as a Renaissance man. I marveled at his ability to do the New York Times crossword puzzle. He was well-read. He loved literature. He loved poetry. He was a photographer. He was a musician. He was a newspaper reporter for the New York Amsterdam News, which was a local black paper. He had a column there called the Bronx Beacon. He was very, very active in politics. An advocate for civil rights and for social justice. Our living room was very lively, filled with lively discussions and debates about the current issues of the day. When he was younger, he played baseball. And in New York, he became an avid fan of the Brooklyn Dodgers. One of the first jobs my father got in New York was working on the staff at Columbia University. Yeah, he was the elevator operator. The previous operator was a black gentleman named Gerry. So my father's name was Booker T. Schley, named after Booker T. Washington. And the gentleman who preceded him on that job was Gerry, and the people started calling my father Gerry. And he liked the name, and it stuck. It stuck. Because when he would go to apply for a job with Booker T, they would know that he was African American and he would not get in the front door. But he worked his way up. He had many jobs, and his last job was working as a manager of New York City Housing Authority. My father went fast, and I went slow, and that caused a tension between us. He could be very critical of me. When I was in high school, my father became ill with cancer and died. He was 40 years old. Years later, when I was living in New York, actually, no, when I was living and working in Chicago, I was riding the bus to work. Standing near the front of the bus, I looked up in the driver's rearview mirror, and I saw my dad. I was shocked. In my role as father, I have tried to do the right thing. Sometimes I would fall into the pattern and be critical of my son, Justin, just as my father had been of me. I remember the good things about my father, his love of his family, his brilliance, his creating a rich cultural environment for myself and Rosalind. The poetry, the piano lessons, the rich conversations. He taught me the poem, A Psalm of Life by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, and it's been a beacon for me throughout my life. It states in part, life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art, to dust returneth, was not spoken of the soul. And then it goes on to say, let us then be up and doing with a heart for any fate, still achieving, still pursuing, learn to labor and to wait. And I'd like to close with the words of Leonard Cohen. May everyone live and may everyone die. Hello, my dad, and my dad, goodbye.